So welcome to everyone that found time to come again today. It's interesting to listen to Shelby and active listening and why it is so important. And today we are going to learn more about how to help other people to feel heard. And that's interesting because all of us want to be heard and all of us want to be those good listeners. Carla, would you be willing to pray for us today?
Okay, let's pray.
Thank you.
Father, thank you so much that we can be together over Zoom. Father, thank you so much, Lord, for everyone that is here. Lord, I pray that you will help Shelby, give her your words, your insights, Lord, and help her. And Father, we also want to ask you to help us to hear what we need to hear, what we need to apply, and how we can learn from this, Lord, and what it is that you are saying to us each individually. Be with us, Lord, and give us a blessed time. Amen.
Amen. Yeah, Shelby.
Thank you, Bodil, and thank you, Carla. And welcome back, everybody, for day 2, although some of you it's day 1. That's okay. I saw that, Ruth. I also just really want to thank you guys for being here. And your time is really, really precious. Your time and your attention and your desire to actually become better listeners and to care well for the people around you. So I just want to say thank you guys as well for taking the time to be with us and to actually seek out, just growth for yourself. I am very passionate about member care and about seeing people taken care of well. So it really excites me and warms my heart to see you guys here with us. All right, so how many of you have actually heard the phrase in regards to relationships, communication is key? Like show of hands, most people, that's something that is fairly common. And I think a lot of the time for me, when I first hear that phrase, communication is key, I think about how to communicate my own message. How do I make myself heard? How do I make myself understood? And while that is, of course, important, and you need to be able to do that and do that well, listening is actually a huge part of communication. Because when people are speaking, you're not actually getting all of their message. I mean, there's some statistic, it's research is like between 25 and 50% of what we hear, we're not remembering. So you're not actually getting people's whole message or giving your whole message. So learning how to listen well and to actually ask really good questions to help you communicate better is really key. So we are going to do some more practice today. We're going to have some time to chat together and some practice time. So I want you guys to be thinking of another story or another issue and be thinking about what you actually want out of the listener. Like, are you, asking them for information or help, or you're just wanting to share, your story? So be aware of that as well when you think of your story that you want to share. What is it that you're looking for in sharing your story? Okay. So I want to give you guys some preparation time to be thinking about that. All right. So yesterday we talked a lot about trust and how listening actually builds trust, and trust builds communities. And it was crazy. Actually, I was speaking with someone last night and I actually shared with them what Carrie had shared yesterday about how trust is building unity and then building, you can hear the word of the Lord. And they were like so blown away. It was amazing. And I was like, we're just passing it on. So your guys' experience and your wisdom in this space is really welcome and really appreciated. So trust is a big piece. And I know that we kind of ended a little bit abruptly yesterday. We kind of ran out of time. I am half Swiss, and so I like to be very careful with people's time and respect that. So that's going to be me ending abruptly if that's what needs to happen. However, I did want to open up some space if there were any questions from yesterday, anything that's maybe, you know, been bubbling up and you're wondering about. I want to give you guys just a little bit of space right now. You can either stick it in the chat or just shout it out if there was anything, and we'll have more time for questions either at the end of today or at the beginning of tomorrow. So any questions, anything that really stood out to you guys that you really want to, you know, kind of share with the group?
I really appreciated the trust tower, but also the anti-trust tower. If that's not the word you used. But anyway, I was wondering if that is available. I think we're getting the PowerPoint after, or where I could look that up. I was telling like a couple people about it yesterday, and I was like, it was so good, this thing, and then I couldn't remember most of it. So
yeah.
Just
So that actually comes from Patrick Lencioni's book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And it is in the PowerPoint. And I think I left that in your guys' notes as well, so you had his name. But you can find it online. It's a very popular book, very good. I actually stole that from Heidi. She teaches about team dynamics, really fantastic. And I found that that was really relevant to the teaching this time, so I kind of stole it.
awesome. Thanks.
Other questions?
Not a question, but just a very brief comment. It really helped me that you touched on the difference of transparency and vulnerability. That helped me a lot and stirred my thinking.
Good. Yeah, definitely also can't take credit for that one, although I cannot remember the guy's name, who it was that I heard on a podcast. But I'm glad that that's also changing others' lives, not just mine. All right. Well, we are going to keep going. And if you guys think of other things, you know, feel free to pop it in the chat or, you know, shout it out inappropriately at any random time, or send us an email at the MCRT if that would be helpful. But now we're going to talk about how do we make people feel heard, because that's kind of what we built up on yesterday. So we want to build trust. Trust builds communities. Trust builds relationships. And the best way to actually build trust is to listen to people and help them feel heard. So how do we help people feel heard? How do you feel heard? What makes you guys feel heard? Instead of a breakout room, we're just going to use this space here to share some things. So I am going to go quiet for a little bit and give you guys a few seconds to just process that. You can shout that out. You know, what makes you feel heard?
It's while I'm speaking, the other person is not interrupting me with the answer. So if they keep quiet and listen, otherwise I feel like they haven't heard me yet. They are just thinking about a solution. Like I think you mentioned it yesterday, the fixing.
Yeah. Yep. God bless my very Swiss husband who always wants to fix every single problem I bring to him.
If a person lets me know that he or she understood.
For me, it's face-to-face and eye contact is really important. If they're looking away at other things, I don't feel heard.
What you doing right now?
We're going to talk about the power of the
I think for me, it's not just a case of echoing back to me what I've said, but that there's some sort of response that shows they're interested and they're curious to know more about it.
Yeah, like follow-up questions, things like that.
yes, that they show an interest in not just repeating what I'm telling them and asking, is that what you said, but more interested in me, and how I feel about it, and asking questions that take the story deeper.
Nice. Thanks, Shirley.
It's nearly this intangible thing that you just sense the person is with you. You can tell the difference if they just have learned the right uh-huhs, and and are they just going through the motions, or are they with you in heart and in spirit? You just feel it. Yeah,
I'd have to agree with that one for sure.
When people don't jump in to give their own opinion or their own solution, they're willing to hear yours without having to say theirs.
Right. Yeah, that's a big one.
To give. Go ahead.
Mine's just real quick. I love the phrase "that makes sense." Just like validating. Yeah.
Marla.
I was thinking of leaving space so you can just, think in your mind from what did I say, and then start the next sentence. So,
Good. Not being afraid of the awkward silence.
Yeah. Attentive silence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something else I found really odd is when I say, I hear what you're saying, that really validates somebody in that you're not just hearing the words, but you're understanding the sentiment of what they're bringing.
That's good. There's a lot of little things. Grow.
Yes, if people have a mental capacity to listen to you, so they can handle that. If you are sharing something painful, they are not running off or getting in pain themselves, but they can handle to be there with you and then to end it well, kind of. But if they don't handle pain, it's then I don't want to share, kind of.
Yeah, that's really wise.
If people stick with you and really listen to you rather than sharing their own story.
The storyteller, yes.
I think, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think sometimes listening can become kind of judgmental depending on the words that you use or the questions that you ask. For example, if someone is listening to me and they will ask a question like, oh, you did that, or why would you do that? And I think that can make it hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, you just want to shut down then. You're like, well,
yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
I was just, you mentioned being curious, but for me, if somebody is too curious, like if I share a story and it's, there are some details that are very difficult, and they get into, there's a balance between asking questions to get information that's helpful and going into because, wow, this really happened.
Yeah, that's what we would call maybe a morbid curiosity. You just want to know because you just want to know all of the details.
I mean, in some situations it's okay to be curious, but there are some situations where it's you just need this little bit to help me. You don't need to have all the details.
Yeah, that's really good also. Thank you. Well, that's really helpful. And I think a lot of what you guys said, you can kind of see different people nodding and being like, oh, yes, that's me as well. I think a lot of us can connect to the same things that we're sharing, that feeling heard, So it means feeling like you have a safe place, that someone's actually connecting with you, actually listening to you. They're not worried about their own agenda. They're not preparing a counter argument in their head while you're speaking. You know, they're not somewhere else. They're actually focused. They're following up. Now we're going to get into a little bit more of those today. Now, a lot of us are also doing a lot of our work online now. So that really changes things up in some of the ways that we're listening. And so we are going to talk about, I'm going to emphasize some ways to do that better online today. So we're talking about ways of doing active listening well in a normal situation. And we are going to kind of give a special emphasis to what active listening online can look like and how you guys can actually maybe apply some of these tips to your work and to your everyday pandemic-filled lives. So 2 things to start with, 2 really important pieces into learning how to help people feel heard. The first one is to know, what is your role in the situation? So are you listening as a friend? Are you listening as a spouse? Are you listening as a parent or a leader or a member care provider or a total stranger? Because that definitely happens. I was at a wedding and I was hanging out in the bridal suite with the bride and the bridesmaids, and we're having a good time. And the bride introduces me and says, "Oh, this is my friend Shelby. She's a counselor, you know, she's lovely, yada, yada." And she leaves. I find myself alone with one of the bridesmaids who just begins pouring out her heart and her story. And, you know, I'm like, okay. So, you know, how was that? You know, and I kind of start going and like, all right, we are having a session right now. That's great. We're in our dresses, you know, our hair's done, like wedding's in like an hour. And here we are having a session. And in the end, she's like crying, like, "Oh, I'm so glad I met you," you know, and I'm like, yeah, okay, like, glad I could help. Just genuinely, I sat there, I shut my mouth, I asked a few pointed questions, and she had a revelation, you know, of the Lord, and it was the Lord's doing. So knowing your role in the situation as well is really important. So another thing to think about when you're thinking about your role is, how does your listening to someone impact them? So how does your listening to somebody impact them? And how does it impact you? So when I was younger and less wise, I had found myself in a situation where someone in leadership above me was sharing some inappropriate, like, leadership stuff with me. And, you know, me in my young and unwiseness was like, "Oh, I feel so important. You know, this leader is sharing these things with me, and wow, I'm in the know. You know, I know these things." And that somehow made me feel really special and important. And, you know, having grown up a little bit now, praise the Lord, I can recognize in those moments where actually this isn't healthy. Like, I should not be listening to this person. I shouldn't be allowing them to share. You know, they need somebody to listen to them. They need to just have a place to share and vent in a safe space. However, I was not that safe space. I should not have allowed them to use me as that safe space, because it impacted me. You know, how I'm hearing things maybe about a situation or about other people, and it's not in the right, you know, line, and impacted them as well. They kind of had created a habit of this. And in the end, it just kind of got really unhealthy. So I think it's really important for us to know, you know, how is it impacting you, and how is it impacting the person as well? I mean, I had been in another difficult situation, and there was a lot going on around me, and I had become depressed, and I had to step back from the situation. And for a season, I actually had to ask people to stop telling me their problems. because it was impacting me. And I had to genuinely take that and say, okay, what's my role in this situation? You know, am I friend? Am I leader? Am I member care provider? Am I broken? Yes, I am. So is it going to help them for me to listen to them? And is it going to help me to listen to them? And I think that's important for us to be aware of as well when we're listening to people, especially if you are a natural member care hearted person. You probably have people coming and telling you their problems all the time. And I see some nods if that's you. Yes, people just tell you all of their stuff. Super exciting, isn't it? So I think if you're naturally that kind of person, of course, we want to help. We want to love people. We want to help them feel heard. But knowing your role and knowing how it's going to impact you and how it could impact them is really important. You know, if your role, for instance, if your role is as a friend and someone is coming to share with you, and maybe you're in the same base community, you know, and they're coming, they're sharing their problems, like, wow, I'm really struggling with this, you know, this is really hard. Maybe it's about, you know, just community life or whatever. And maybe you're feeling the same thing. And so you're like, oh yeah, like me too, like, oh, that's really hard. It can become a dangerous place, you know, where do you start to like poison each other and just kind of drown each other, or, you know, is there a process? So just being aware of your role in that person's life. And, you know, you also have to be aware of your own situation. I think somebody said this in the feedback at the beginning, you know, being aware of your, I think maybe it was Grow who said, you know, is this person actually able to accept what I'm telling them? Like, is their capacity, you know, are they in a place where they can accept pain or they can listen well? And that's really important to know your own situation, your capacity, and your abilities. So Cindy Aiden, who's on our team, she had done a fantastic seminar around trauma debriefing. And she shared with us, you know, some instances that she had where she had to, you know, went through this training with people and in the end had to say, you know what, I don't think this is for you. I don't think you're built to be a trauma debriefer, because that takes a certain capacity. And so it's important to know, you know, if someone's coming to you with something, do you have the capacity? Do you have the skills and the ability to take that on? So good questions for yourself. The second big thing to think about is, one more thing about your role. The Peace Pursuit Guide is a fantastic resource for member care providers if you are not sure of your role in a conflict situation. So if you find yourself with people sharing conflict with you and you are not sure what you should do, the Peace Pursuit Guide, and we can include a link to that in the follow-up information that we send you guys, is a really, really easy to follow, great visual. It's in several different languages, guide to help you work through a conflict and find your role in the conflict. So, second big thing, what is the person trying to communicate to you? Oh my goodness, if you can get this, you will save yourself and anybody who talks to you so much time and effort. Okay, like for reals. So, are they asking for information? Are they asking for information? Are they asking for help or a solution? Or do they just need to vent? Yes, I have definitely talked to my husband about this many, many times in the 9 years of marriage that we have been together. Oh my goodness. So are they asking for information? Are they asking for help or a solution? Or do they just need to vent? And if you can listen to someone and discern that, you will save yourself and them so much hurt and wasted energy. Okay, so many of us actually believe, maybe based on our personality or maybe based on the relationship that we have with that person, that we know what they're asking for. You know, just because if, like my husband, God bless him, he is a problem solver, 100%. So he's, you know, automatically, anytime I come to him with something, he's like, all right, I need a solution. No, pumpkin, I don't need a solution. I just need to cry. Okay. Oh my goodness. It was the best, especially at the beginning of our marriage. I would just be sobbing on the couch and he would be standing there just looking at me. And I was like, oh my gosh, this person. And I had to tell him, I was like, all I need you to do is like touch me and say, it's going to be okay. And he was like, oh, okay. It's going to be okay. And I was like, thank you. I feel so much better. And I legitimately felt so much better. Oh, I love him. He's great. He's learning a lot now. He's getting it much faster. So don't assume that you know what the person is asking you for. You know, it could be, sometimes I have some people in my life who often, most of the time when they come to me, they want something from me, like they need help or they're asking for, you know, something. And I found it in the past easy to assume then that every time they want to talk to me, it's because they need something. And while that may be the case 99% of the time, there might be that one time when they actually feel safe enough where they need to just vent. So be aware that you're not assuming that you know why the person is coming to you. That can actually lead to a lot of miscommunication and a lot of hurt. If you feel like, yeah, okay, here, I could do this thing for you. And they're like, I just need to cry. Like my husband. Weird. He's precious, by the way. He's super great. Okay, so you actually have to listen in order to know what they're asking for, right? The crazy thing is that of the ways that we communicate with each other, 55% is with our body language. Okay, 55% of how we communicate is with our body language. 38% is with your tone of voice. That leaves 7% for the actual words that are coming out of your mouth, which is actually good news since a lot of us work cross-culturally or work with people who speak another language. So good news for us, it's very little about the words, okay? So listening online, right? If 55% of our communication is our body language and 38% is our tone of voice, listening online can be difficult. It can be even more difficult if you have a bad internet connection, right? I'm not sure how many of you have experienced this, you know, especially during the pandemic, where you're maybe trying to have a serious conversation with somebody and you're just like, because you can't, you know, you're trying to hear, and whether it's internet connection or, you know, just whatever, it's extremely difficult. So if you have bad internet connection and you can't see or hear well somebody's body language or their tone of voice, you actually need to be aware of if you are the right person to be talking to them. So that sounds a little bit harsh, but it really is the reality. There is no way I can have a counseling session with someone online if our internet keeps cutting out. It does not serve them. It does not serve me. It wastes my time. So how to care for those people, you know, if you're just struggling or their internet is struggling, you know, I often then reach out to like the Global Member Care Network. It's a fantastic resource to see if there's anybody that can meet them in person where they are. So something about listening online to be aware of that is important to know. It kind of goes back to looking at your capacity, your abilities. Do you have good enough internet? Do they have good enough internet to actually listen well? Because genuinely, what is the point if you hear something and you're like, oh my gosh, Heidi hates hamburgers. I had no idea. Well, I'm not serving her hamburgers. And she's like, I was literally never talking about hamburgers. So it's dangerous. Be aware. All right. So I want to show you guys a demo. I really hope that the sound comes through, because it is like one of the best demos that I have seen that helps express listening. I just want to make a note. Marcia did just mention, to everybody, that masks impede our communication quite a bit. So that's something that we're all dealing with. So being aware of that as well. Okay, so I'm going to try and show you this demo. I apologize if the sound does not come through well. What it is there's two guys talking, and Ryan is holding a basket. And the basket represents, his mind that's just full of all of the stuff, all of his feelings and his thoughts and everything. And then Philip comes to talk to him, or to listen to him. So we are going to try this. Love it. I hope that was okay for you guys. If you weren't hearing it correctly, it was just, Philip had tried to be like, oh, well, you should do this and you should do this. And I have legitimately done that so many times, especially when I'm tired or when I'm really stressed. I go into problem solving mode, and it's like, okay, well, here, you just need to do this and this. And if you notice, Philip literally didn't do anything else. On the second one, he let Ryan just kind of unload on him, and he was like, okay, tell me more. Like, go on. And then at the end, Ryan was like, oh, wow, I feel so much better. He literally didn't have to do anything. He just listened, and Philip was just like, okay, I hear you. So I don't know if you guys have ever done that, but I definitely do sometimes. So I love this demo because it's a great reminder, even when I get tired or busy or stressed, all you have to do is sit back and listen. So we are going to go have a process breakout room now, just for 10 minutes. And I want you guys to discuss with each other, what are some of your weaknesses in listening? Are you like Philip in the first one? Like, I've definitely done that. Or some of the feedback that we talked about at the beginning, did you hear what someone said and be like, oh, I've done that before. So talk about some of your weaknesses, and also, are you able to discern what the speaker is asking you for? Are they asking for information, for help, or they just need to vent? So you guys can have 10 minutes and just discuss that together. Great, welcome back. I hope that was not too depressing, but actually encouraging to see that we all have areas where maybe we struggle with listening. And I think it's good for us to recognize, where those are, so that we can be aware of them when we're tired, when we're stressed, when we're busy, whatever. Okay, so we are going to practice now, because that is excellent, how we learn. And what we're going to do is you're going to tell the person the story that you thought of earlier. And whoever's listening, you're going to have to discern if the person is asking for information, if they're asking for advice or counsel, or if they're just needing to vent. Okay, so you're going to listen to them. When they're done sharing, this, you can be like, was it this? And they can confirm that, and then you guys will switch. So we're going to have 20 minutes together to do that. Excellent. So we are about to go have a coffee break, but I would love to just hear a little bit of feedback from you guys, how that was for you. You've had a couple of practices now. So how are you feeling? How was that?
It's really easy to listen to someone when they're passionate about what they're sharing.
I thought it was really nice to go in there to listen with intentionality and really determine, like think through what is this person sharing with me instead of just listening and not really thinking about it. But I thought that was really good, the intentionality to understand what are they really trying to share with me or what do they want from me listening.
All right. Okay, so had some practice, learned some things, hopefully. We've got some more tips and techniques to share with you guys in the last part of today's session. So we're going to talk about 5 key active listening techniques. So just really now getting into the nitty-gritty, as we say, the very practical side of learning how to do this well. They're going to actually help you hear the other person and help the other person, let them know that you are hearing what they're saying, which is kind of what we're going for, isn't it? All right, so the first thing, we want to pay attention. We want to pay attention to people. So that means you want to give the speaker your undivided attention and be able to actually acknowledge their message, acknowledge what they're saying. Recognize that nonverbal communication speaks really loudly. Okay, so that's, we talked about that earlier, your body language, your tone of voice, all of those nonverbal cues speak really loudly. So you're going to want to look at the speaker directly. However, you definitely want to be aware of cultural norms. So in some cultures, it is actually inappropriate to look at somebody in the eye for a long time. So be aware of that. A note for doing this online. Okay, so here's a little online side note. Make sure that your camera faces you head on so that you can actually pretend that you're actually looking at someone. A lot of times people will have maybe 2 screens. And so they're like over here, talking to you, but their camera's over here. So make sure your camera faces you head on and that the screen that shows the person you are talking to is also in front of your face. Okay, so person, camera. You would be surprised at how many people don't do this. So if you're like, yeah, it's obvious, welcome to my world. It is not obvious for everybody. Put aside distracting thoughts. Online, this looks like closing all of your other browsers, like closing your Facebook and closing the Airbnb search that you were doing earlier and just shutting all of that down. Turning your phone off. Turn it off. I'm going to send you guys a great video from Simon Sinek, who's like my member care BFF, even though he doesn't know it, about the power of actually like how people feel when you have your phone simply in your hand versus when you put it away. So turn your phone off. Make sure your housemates and your spouse and your kids and your cats all know that you are busy. So if possible, get yourself in a place where you can give your full attention. Another thing that is going to help you pay attention is to not mentally prepare your response or even sometimes your next question while you're listening. If your mind is working on what you want to say, you will not hear everything that you need to hear. And that's, I know a couple of you mentioned that as being important to feeling heard, where you actually feel like someone is listening and they're not preparing their response in their head. If you're going to prepare your counter argument, so let's say we're in a conflict situation, And, you know, someone's sharing with you these things and you're just, well, yeah, but, you know, you don't understand, but kind of thing. And you're preparing that in your head. If you're doing that when you're listening, you're not actually taking the time and energy that is needed to truly listen to somebody. You can take notes if you need to. But if you are talking to somebody online, make sure that they know that that is what you're doing, because you break eye contact when you're taking notes, right? So I let people know, hey, I'm taking notes. Is that okay? Great. So it doesn't look that I'm looking down at my phone, or, you know, I'm not interested in what they're saying if I'm looking down. So that's another kind of online tip. If you're going to take notes, let them know that you're taking notes. You want to also try to avoid being distracted by environmental factors. If you can, go somewhere quiet. This definitely applies when we're living our life in person with people. You know, if you're going to have a conversation, don't have that serious conversation at coffee break, or maybe as you're strolling through the dining room. You know, and if someone tries to stop you and say, hey, you know, and they just start sharing, like, hey, let's maybe just go into this classroom, or, you know, go into this room over here. That's going to help you pay attention, and listen to their body language. Okay, so are they comfortable? Are they closed? Are they, you know, crossing their arms and their legs, and tense, tight body language? Now, a note about listening online and body language. So not being able to see someone's whole body, you're going to have to pay more attention to their face and to what is actually visible in the screen. Okay, so are they struggling to look at you? Are they kind of hanging their head? Are they fidgeting, you know, constantly? What do I do with my hands? Kind of situation. Like, you can pay attention to what actually is visible, because a lot will come through in that. Again, putting away your phone, just put that thing away. We love it, super helpful. Praise God for technology. We can have this, you know, seminar together, but put the phone away. It's so powerful, and you'll probably feel good as well. It actually, people perceive that you are not listening to them when you have your phone in your hand. So put it in your back pocket, put it on a table over there, leave it, and then pick it back up when you're done. Simple things, but powerful. Next tip, show that you're listening. Oh, genius, right? I know, I have a degree. Of course, makes sense. Just kidding. You want to use your own body language and gestures to convey your attention, right? So you can nod, you can smile, you can use facial expressions, you know, hopefully you're not going to freak people out. I cannot lie. Everything comes out on my face. So I have to be really careful, I find, when someone says something that I maybe feel like, woo, okay, to not do that face. Okay, yes, that's how interesting, you know. So be aware of your facial expression, but also making sure that they can see, yes, you're engaged, you're nodding, maybe smiling. I would, you know, suggest not crying openly as soon as someone shares something shocking, although there is a time and place for that as well. This also may differ depending on cultural norms. Okay, so know your audience when you can. Most of us are working in Europe, and oftentimes I feel like we expect people when they come into Europe to respond and communicate in the way that we do here in Europe, even though that, of course, differs from culture to culture. So try to know your audience where you can. I cannot tell you how many students I had from some warm cultures who came to a school that I was leading, and they were like, oh, you're a woman. And I was like, surprise, So exciting. And I had to be aware that for them, being led by a woman meant certain things. So know your audience where you can and be aware of the culture that they're coming from so that you can actually maybe meet them halfway in where they're at. That shows a lot of care when you can do that, and people actually can feel safe with you. So now trying to show that you're listening while talking to somebody online. Oh, connecting online is often a lot more tiring, isn't it? I'm sure you've all experienced that, because we do try to use more of our facial expressions. Like I've literally had to like draw in my eyebrows because they just get so tired, you know, I'm trying to be like, interesting. Okay. So it is tiring, and it is good to know that it's not a problem for you in that sense. It's not you, it's just communicating online. So making sure that your face can be clearly seen is going to help you not to tire yourself as much. So that means, you know, making sure there's no sun behind your head. You know, if you're sitting in front of a window and the sun's shining in and your face is dark, how are they going to know that you're listening, right? So you can sit with a window on the side because you get some nice light in that at least illuminates part of your face. Also be aware of your background. Some people like to use these filters that like blur the background, or, you know, put up a super exciting, exotic place, and they just annoy me because as soon as you move, you know, it blurs or it jumps out. And for me as a listener, I find that very distracting. I've had feedback from some people as well that that is a very distracting thing. So just be aware of where you are. All right, you want to note your posture as well, that it's open and inviting. So when you sit and you talk to somebody with your arms closed or your legs crossed, and you're maybe, you know, leaning back and just really kind of just having a good time, that's maybe not going to feel like you are listening to them. So you want to be aware of that. That's true in real life, and it's true online. So be careful. All right, you want to also encourage the speaker to continue with, you know, some small verbal cues, some comments. Someone mentioned that earlier, and I'm like, and we are going to have a little demo now with me and Bodil. Hannes, if you could spotlight us about the power of the It's a powerful little phrase. All right, it's my faithful demo friend. So we are going to look at the awkward one first, what it looks like when there are no verbal cues, and then what it looks like when you can give verbal cues. So, hello, Bodil. How are you?
Oh, I'm well, thank you. But it's just, I don't know, a small or a big thing. It's something that is bothering me a little bit now. So yeah, it's a little bit strange because, you know, I'm coming from a country where people have very much trust in government and in other people. And now the nation where I live now, it's not like that. And now with the COVID situation and with the vaccination too, it's the same. So people really don't want to be vaccinated. And I really wonder, what should I do? Because most of the doctors don't think that it's a good thing to be vaccinated. So I'm thinking, wow, it's kind of scary to go to a doctor who thinks this is bad. And then I feel confused because people from my background country say, of course. And then people say here, of course not. And then I think it's a strange confusion. But yeah, so I don't know what I should do exactly. And yeah, that's one thing, but it's, yeah, many situations like that too. Yeah.
So awkward.
Yeah.
So awkward. Oh man. Okay. How did you feel about sharing?
I was wondering if you were thinking about something else. If you were busy, if I should continue, or if I should stop, or if I just should stay. How are you?
Right. Okay. Wow. So there's a lot packed into the fact that I simply was silent.
Yes, silent is not always good.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That was really awkward for me to like keep my mouth shut. Not saying anything. Okay, cool. Well, now let's do the other one. Hi, Bodil. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you. But yeah, it's one of those a little bit confusing situations again because of the COVID situation and to be vaccinated or not to be vaccinated. And of course, everybody in my birth country say that, of course. And then everybody in the country where I live now, they say, of course not. Then I'm thinking, it's a little bit scary to go and get vaccinated by a doctor who believes that I should not get vaccinated.
Wow.
So then I'm wondering, what should I do? And I feel like strange that I am even questioning it and being confused about such a strange thing. Because both sides are like, of course.
Sure.
And then I feel like staying in the middle and wondering, what should I do? Which voice to listen to?
Wow. Yeah, that sounds really hard.
Yeah, it's a strange situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And. So, Bodil, how did that feel for you versus the first time?
Yeah, now it was different because now it was easier to see that you were following and asking questions and following and just I understand that must be hard.
Yeah,
that was good.
Okay, cool. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for being my demo friend. We have 2 demo friends today. We're going to see another demo friend. All right, so that was something that was so small, right? Simply the power of the And particularly when you are maybe talking to somebody or listening to somebody who is sharing something that you could feel is very controversial or you really strongly disagree with. But you are like, okay, I want to hear you. I want to listen. So just giving those small verbal cues like, okay, go on, tell me more. And that just opens that up and helps them feel that they can continue to share. And you can actually begin to understand maybe why they feel the way that they do or why they think the way that they do. And it's a really small thing, particularly if you're stuck and you're like, I really have no idea what to say to this person. Give them an okay, and 9 times out of 10, they will just keep talking. And that will maybe give you just more information or more understanding of what it is that they're trying to communicate. So it's very powerful. All right, now on providing feedback. So our personal filters, assumptions, judgments, and beliefs can distort what we hear, right? So if Bodil had been talking to me, about vaccinations and I thought this and she thought that, and we're not going to listen to each other because, we're opposing. So your own filters, be aware of what they are and that they are there. But as a listener, your role is to understand what is being said. Your role is not to jump in and get them and say your side and all of that kind of stuff. As a listener, your role is to understand the other person. And this may actually require you to reflect back what is being said. So reflecting what is being said by paraphrasing. So if I can't tell you how many times this has just been amazing. So I'm talking to my husband. He's an internal processor. God bless him. Like, my brain is a grease slide. So anything that pops in comes right out my mouth. Like, that's the process. I have to get it all out there so I can sort through it and like decide what I want to keep. And his brain is a French horn. So a French horn is one of those horns that like goes around and around and around. So it goes around and around and around and maybe eventually comes out. Most of the time, not. Yeah. So when he says something, if something comes out of his mouth, it is a thing. It has been thought through. It has been decided. This is how he feels. When something comes out of my brain, it's like, well, what if we did this? And what if we moved to Mauritius? And gosh, I bet New Zealand is lovely this time of year. And I wonder if we could go to the moon. And he starts stressing out because he's like, how are we going to move to Mauritius? How can I farm there? How can I get on a rocket to go to the moon? Because that's how his brain works. Internal processors, when they come out, it's there. This is what it is. So being able to use reflective listening can actually really help you understand better about where a person is coming from, and what they're actually trying to say. So I'm teaching him to do this so he can say, okay, so what I'm hearing is that you want to move to the moon. And I'm like, no, I don't want to move to the moon, but how interesting would it be if you could? You know, and he's like, okay, I can stop freaking out. So having that reflective listening can be really, really helpful to actually get it. So you can say, what I'm hearing you say is, that's a really great phrase to use. What I'm hearing you say is you want to move to the moon. Nope. Or it sounds to me like what you're saying is. And that can help, particularly in conflict situations. You can ask questions to clarify certain points. So what do you mean when you say you think it would be cool to go to the moon? Well, I just think it would be cool to go to the moon. Okay, so you're not saying you want to move to the moon. No, pumpkin, I don't want to move to the moon. And those will actually help you get more deeper understanding of what they're trying to say. You can also summarize the speaker's comments periodically to make sure you're understanding what they're saying. Okay, so this is also a great thing to use if you feel like you're getting stuck listening to someone. So you're like, okay, you've told me all about your bunny and how they died when you were 7 and how you feel that's affecting your work now. And like, you can simply just summarize and then leave it. And again, 9 times out of 10, the person will just keep talking, which will help you get more information and more understanding of what it is that they're trying to say. Okay, so that's a great tool if you get stuck with somebody. Just give a nice summary of what they're saying. What I'm hearing you say is, that was really hard for you when your rabbit died when you were 7, and you feel like that's affecting your work now. I have no idea how the rabbit's death at 7 years old could possibly be affecting her work now, but how am I going to figure that out unless I get her to keep talking? All right, so we're going to have another quick demo with my other demo buddy. It's Shirley. Hannes, can you go ahead and pin me and Shirley? And I'm just going to demo for you guys a bit of reflective listening so that you can see what that looks like. Hi, Shirley. How are you doing? It's so good to see you.
I'm okay, thank you. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I just wanted to run something by you and ask your opinion.
Sure.
My mother-in-law, she's going to have a big birthday soon, and we normally for her birthday, there's nothing she likes better than having all her children around her with their spouses and families. And that's kind of how we've done it over the years. But at the minute, we couldn't do it like that last year.
Sure.
This year, we're not sure. The rules are a bit hazy. Last year it was clear, we just couldn't do it.
Right.
But this year it's kind of not clear what you can do and what you can't do.
Okay.
And I mean, we went up and spent a little bit of time at Christmas with her, and we would like Roy and I and our daughters and grandsons would like to go up and spend a bit of time on her birthday with her. But Roy's brother is very concerned that we would bring COVID to her, even though we're testing regularly.
Right.
And Roy's sister, she doesn't really want to come because she works in a school and there's a lot of infection amongst the kids.
Right.
And she's worried about, you know, bringing in infection. And there's this sort of discussion or debate going on in the family as to how best to protect mum, but how best to celebrate with her and give her a lovely time. And we don't know the right thing to do, really, or the best way forward in it.
Yeah. Wow. And that's really complicated. You know, that you guys have had something that you've done for so long, you know, a certain way, and that's been really lovely, you know, for her, where she's felt really loved and connected with you guys. But now, because of COVID, you know, everything's up in the air, and now the family's a bit undecided. And, you know, sounds like you maybe got a bit of tension between people who want to do it this way and, you know, people who want to do it the other way.
Yeah, I mean, everybody just wants the best for her, but what's the best for her? Because she's so lonely and, you know, she's used to being celebrated. And yet, you know, she's pretty elderly and fragile physically. So it's just balancing all of that out and keeping peace in the family.
Yeah. And that is a balancing act, isn't it? Trying to keep that peace and love your parent and help her feel loved and supported, you know, amidst all of this, you know, COVID craziness. That sounds really hard. I'm really sorry. And we'll end there. Thank you, Shirley. How was that for you?
It was fine. The way you reflected back to me, you clearly heard what I said. Yeah. It's just too short a time to go anywhere with it.
Exactly. I was like, we don't want to get into actually like giving my opinion about this, because she did ask that at the beginning, didn't she? She said, I want to know your opinion about something. So that was really clear on what she was asking for, but we don't have time to fully walk through what a session would look like. Well, thank you, Shirley. I really appreciate that. I do want to finish with a couple of points. One thing that's really important is to replace your judgment with curiosity. And I know that Elsa had mentioned that earlier, you know, about you don't want to get too curious in that sense. And what I mean by replacing judgment with curiosity is allowing the speaker to finish each point before asking questions. And that may seem obvious in a lot of our situations. However, I find that when people are in conflict, or when they are in conflict against somebody else, that they're trying to listen to each other, that we often do that. We want to make our own point. We want to, you know, get it in there first before the other person has actually finished. So that's what I mean when I talk about replacing judgment with curiosity. You know, being curious, why is this person feeling this way? Why do they feel that we're in conflict? Or why are we in conflict? You know, it's a real thing. So don't interrupt with counter arguments. That's not going to get anybody anywhere. And don't point out flaws in their logic or thinking. That's also extremely unhelpful. So when you're talking to somebody, I see this a lot in debriefing. When I debrief people, people are in pain They're sharing, you know, their stuff, and maybe something will come out that I strongly disagree with theologically around their views of God or suffering or whatever. If I jump in and I say, hey, I disagree with you, God is not like this or whatever, I've lost them completely. They're not going to feel comfortable. They're not going to feel safe sharing with me. And they're in pain. I can just let them walk with that and wait for an opportunity, if it comes up, to maybe address that gently later. Okay, so just be curious in that sense. And responding appropriately. So there's a difference between reacting and responding. So reacting is when you're in the middle of the street and a car comes and you jump out of the way. Okay, that's a reaction. Responding is when you actually take the time to think about what you're wanting to say, and how you're going to respond in doing that. Not letting your own emotions hurt the other person. You know, again, this can be in conflict, or this can be when you are strongly disagreeing with something that somebody's saying. So if you need to take time before responding to somebody, do it. Like, it costs nothing to take the time that you need to actually respond in a loving, appropriate way, but it saves relationships. So it costs you nothing to wait, but it saves relationships. So if you need to say, hey, I hear you, I just need some time to think about this and I'll come back to you, then please do that. You always want to treat the other person in a way that you want to be treated, right? You know, imagine yourself in their position and think what sort of response would help you feel safe? You know, especially if someone is sharing something that's maybe shocking to you, and you're very surprised, try to keep the eyebrows down a little bit, Shelby. And you can just say, okay, how would I feel safe if I was sharing something that shocked this person? One last note about listening online, and then we're going to close for today. Living online for the listener and for the speaker is much more tiring than doing this in person. So know your limits, and check in with them about theirs. Okay, so you can just ask them, you know, how are you doing? What kind of time do you have to give to, you know, our chat today? Particularly with debriefing, if you're debriefing online, because debriefing is a longer process and it can be a heavier process. So make sure that you're checking in with the people and say, hey, this is where we're going to limit, you know, our time online together, so that you're not losing people. We do that with our seminars. You know, we don't go over 3 hours in any of our seminars because people just can't do it online. So you can set your time limit, or at least the general one, at the beginning of the meeting. If you're meeting in a professional capacity as a member care provider, and you're, you know, doing a debriefing or having a session, a counseling session, something like that, you can say, okay, today we're going to talk for an hour, and then we'll see where we go from there, so that both parties are aware, and that helps them kind of conserve their energy and you as well. All right, so we've had a bit of process, a bit of practice, and a lot of info today. God bless you guys. You're doing awesome. I hope it's been okay. I know there was a lot that I just dumped on you in the last 45 minutes. I want to just remind you guys, you know, there's a lot of do's and don'ts somehow, but in the end, just be yourself. You know, if you're so stressed about trying to do it right, then you're going to stress yourself out. Your listener or the person who's speaking is going to feel that as well. So in the end, please just be yourself, just relax. And the more that you practice, it will come. All right, quickly, is there any questions? And we'll leave some time tomorrow for questions as well. But if there's anything burning in somebody's brain, now is the time to share it.
Maybe this could also be saved for tomorrow, but I was just thinking, you were saying don't interrupt someone kind of in conflict situations. What about the moments where the person actually won't listen, like won't stop talking? I have a few friends like this, where you're just like, if I don't interrupt you, I won't actually speak. But maybe this isn't specific.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we probably all had people like that in our lives where you're kind of like, where's the thing? And I think that can fall under, you know, setting your limits and knowing your limits. So some people actually don't get social cues. Like that's a real thing. And that's okay. And some people really, really, really just need to talk, and or they're verbal processors. Yeah, like this one. I talk a lot more when I'm tired. Like I genuinely am like 10:30 at night. I'm talking to my husband. He is literally falling asleep. And I'm like, and he's just laying there like this. And then he's like, Shelby, you're tired. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're so right. Okay. So I think if you run into something like that, you can definitely just really gently be like, okay, I'm super happy to hear you. You know, we can set up another time to talk if you want to. I think that's okay when you're feeling like this is a consistent issue, if you will. Thank you guys so much for your time. Thanks for giving us a few extra minutes. Thanks for listening to me talk really quickly. I hope it wasn't too quick. We will send you lots of information at the end, but I will hand it over now to Bodil, who will close us out.
Yeah, thank you, Shelby, and thank you to all of you. So have a good afternoon and evening, and see you again tomorrow. Same place and same time. Okay, goodbye.